1. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Alice falls down the rabbit hole. This story can actually be divided into four main sections. The first section is about Alice's experiences of growing larger and smaller. Alice and her sister sitting by the river, feeling quite bored. Her sister is reading a book, and Alice glances at it, noticing that it is filled with words but lacks illustrations. She exclaims, "What use is a book without pictures or conversations?" Just as she is feeling bored, she spots a white rabbit falling into a rabbit hole, and the rabbit is talking. Intrigued, Alice decides to chase after the rabbit. Would you chase after that rabbit? Well, she did, and she fell into the rabbit hole, tumbling downwards. Later, she discovers the ability to change her size within the rabbit hole. During this journey, she encounters a dodo bird, a pigeon, and a mouse, all of whom are drifting on a large sea, soaked through. She also meets a lazy caterpillar smoking a hookah, who teaches her how to precisely control her body size. This is the first story. In this tale, Alice encounters a dodo bird. In the time when Dodgson lived, the dodo bird was already extinct, but there is a dodo specimen at Oxford University. Why does this dodo appear in the story? It is said that the pronunciation of Dodgson sounds very much like dodo, and he had a slight stutter, often introducing himself as "I am Dodgson." This is not a disrespect toward stuttering, it merely expresses the background reason. Thus, Dodgson projected himself onto the dodo bird, incorporating himself into the story, which is quite amusing. The story of changing size is divided into several stages. The first stage is an unconscious change in size. After falling into the rabbit hole, Alice sees some enticing food and drink. For instance, there is a bottle labeled "Drink Me" and a cake. After consuming them, she loses control over her body, sometimes growing so large that she cannot fit in a house, and at other times shrinking down to a tiny size. The second stage involves irregular changes, not just simple enlargements or reductions. After eating a mushroom, sometimes her hands grow long, sometimes her neck stretches, and at other times her neck shortens, causing her chin to bump against her feet. This is an irregular transformation. The third stage is when she gains control over her entire body, skillfully navigating her size changes. In the subsequent stories, she continuously utilizes her ability to change size to engage in various plot developments. 2. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Alice meets the Duchess in the second stage. After leaving the caterpillar, Alice arrives at the home of a duchess. The duchess's servant is a fish. Everyone knows that a fish's eyes are located on its head, so Alice feels that the servant never looks at her while speaking. For example, when she knocks on the door, the servant says, "I am outside. Knocking is useless." She knocks again and it replies, "If you are inside, I could open the door for you." It also states, "If we are both outside, knocking is meaningless." This servant talks to itself, not engaging with Alice, always looking up, which she finds quite rude. The Duchess is in the kitchen, holding a baby, and she is very irritable. The baby keeps sneezing.
Why?
Because her cook is madly pouring pepper into the soup, causing the baby to sneeze uncontrollably. As Alice observes, the baby transforms into a piglet, becoming a pig-faced infant. Alice remarks, "If it were a baby, it would be quite ugly. If it were a piglet, it would be a beautiful little pig, but it is a baby." Upon seeing Alice, the Duchess tells her, "I am going to the Queen's croquet match." If Alice's size-changing story is primarily a solo act focusing on her inner thoughts, the story with the Duchess marks Alice's first encounter with society. As adults, we learn the rules of society gradually, often feeling that this is how things operate. Even if some aspects sound ironic or absurd, we eventually come to accept them. But for children, if a child is suddenly thrown into a social situation, they might perceive these people as mad, and the madness and rudeness of society do not seem so natural. In Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, the rabbit hole world Alice falls into is actually a highly hierarchical world. It represents both Alice's future as she grows up and Dodgson's recollections of the past. How do we understand this? We can see that the Duchess's estate and the Queen of Hearts estate are both satirical representations of British aristocratic etiquette. It is hard to classify Alice's Adventures in Wonderland as purely satirical literature, but it does allow children to sense the absurdities of real life. Interestingly, when we grow up and read it again, we realize that the absurdities we questioned are quite natural, and we should be as perceptive as children in recognizing the madness and irrationality of society.